So, is there living amongst us today some kind of race of superhumans? Well, it's quite possible that there is, and I'm going to present to you some facts that will support this claim. See, there is a race alive today, spread out across the globe, that some say are possibly genetically or different in some way to the rest of humanity. This tribe is ancient, going back to the early times of recorded history. But before I reveal to you who the tribe is, I want to show you some amazing facts about how different they are from the rest of humanity and how they stand out above the rest of us. This tribe has spread out over the centuries from its origins in the northern Middle East and then out across Europe and eventually to America. And today in the United States it comprises less than 2% of the whole American population. Now just take a note of that number because it's really important. They represent only 2% of the total population of the USA. And this 2% features really prominently and disproportionately in all the areas of science and politics, the arts and banking and finance. In fact, you'll find this tribe in places of prominence wherever they need to be and in important positions of influence wherever it's important to be. This 2%, for instance, is interesting because in the USA, of all the Nobel Prizes won, this 2% have won 27% of all the Nobel Prizes. And that's astonishing. But in fact, if you look a bit deeper, you'll find that they've also won 25% of all the Fields medals, which is the world of mathematics. And then there's the ACM Turing Awards, and they've won 25% of that as well. And if that wasn't enough, half of the world's chess champions come from this group. That's right, 50% of the world's chess champions have come from this single 2% group. Now, there's a really interesting study that was done a while back that showed that of all the Ivy League college students, 21% of them originate from this group of people as well. And then if you look in the world of the arts, the Oscars that have been awarded to directors for movies have been won at a rate of 38% by this tiny little group of people. Now, if this was not astonishing enough in its own, the following fact might begin to help explain how they have achieved this. In the IQ testing world, the population of the world is tested and you get a median score of about 100. Now, this tribe have been extensively tested and their median IQ is a 125. That means that this 2% are more intelligent than 92 or 93% of the rest of humanity. And this is a massive statistical anomaly, and it gives rise to me for three questions. One, first of all, of course, who they are. Two, where did they come from? And three, why are they so advanced? Now, you need to go back into antiquity to find the answer. And we go back to this area in Upper Central Europe, which borders around the Black Sea. This is the land that was known as Khazaria, and the tribe that was there are called the Ashkenazi. Now, at some point, the Ashkenazi around the 10th century found themselves sort of squeezed between Christians from the west and Islam from the east, and they had to make a choice. And the choice they made was they converted to Judaism. They didn't want to be one or the other. They decided for some reason on becoming Jews. And they're now known today as Ashkenazi Jews, one of the sects of Judaism. And these Ashkenazi Jews then, over the centuries, spread out across Europe, through Eastern Europe and into Germany, and then also south into the lands of Israel and Canaan. And in Germany, they actually developed their own language. And although it sounds a bit like German, it's in fact the basis of modern day Yiddish. So have a listen to this and you'll be able to see what it sounds like.
Eins, zwei, drei, vier, Arbeitslose sehnen mir, nicht gehört hat doch im Land, in Fabrik dem Hammerglanz, liegen Kehl im Kalt vergessen, es nehmt der Schaber sich schön fressen, gehen wir herum in Gas, wie die Queer im Pust und Pass, wie die Queer im Pust und Pass.
Now in the 1930s, when the Nazis came to power, then these Jews obviously came under a lot of pressure. And many of those who decided they could make a run for it and managed to escape ended up in America, where they just joined in with modern American society and developed very powerful, wealthy positions in all the important areas of American society, in politics, banking, the sciences and the arts. I'd also like to just tell you the names of some of the most prominent Ashkenazis, because then you begin to understand the depth at which they have been able to make such an influence in not just American society, but in the world. So in the world of science, the first one is of course recognizable by everybody. It's Albert Einstein. Then there's Robert Oppenheimer, the inventor of the atomic bomb, Niels Bohr, the quantum physics pioneer, Jonas Salk, who pioneered vaccines, Carl Sagan, the astrophysicist and cosmologist. And in the world of banking, of course, you have the Rothschilds, the Salomons, the Wahlbergs, the Goldman Sachs. And you may not know that the chairman of the Federal Reserve for the last 25 odd years, every chairman has been from this group. The current chairman is Janet Yellen, before then Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan and Paul Volcker. Even Larry Summers, one of the long-term chief US economists, is from this group. So in fact, you could say that almost the control and the direction of the US economy, and therefore by default the world, is dominated by Ashkenazis. And in the world of the arts, if you look at the names there, Steven Spielberg, Woody Allen, Louis B. Mayer from MGM, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, Barbra Streisand, Billy Joel, Bob Dylan, just to name a few. And artists like Chagall, Pissarro, Annie Leibovitz, the photographer, Frida Kahlo, Roy Lichtenstein, the artist. The names just go on and on, all the way through into the modern day. And if we look at the IT world now and social media, you've got Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, Steve Ballmer at Microsoft, Larry Ellison at Oracle, and Sergey Brin and Larry Page at Google, and Jeff Zucker running NBC. Really, it's an amazing play on every area of commerce, politics, science and the arts. And even in the legal system, in the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest authority in the United States, 3 of the Supreme Court are also from this particular background. So if you look at the American power the Ashkenazi have, their offspring dominate all of these areas right across the world now. So the question is, how did they get so smart? Well, let's go back into antiquity. The earliest written accounts that we have come from the Sumerians, who created clay tablets. And the Sumerians were in themselves an amazing race. They were the first people that went from becoming nomadics and very rapidly, in a very short space of time, created agriculture, domesticated animals, created modern numbers, invented the wheel. They also were the first people to give us this writing on these clay tablets, and from that we're able to see a lot about what the Sumerians knew and how they ran their society and what knowledge they had. So we're able to see from their clay text that, for instance, they knew that we had a solar system. They knew we had at least 9 planets in that solar system. It took us 4,500 years to work that one out. They knew that the Earth and the planets circulated around the sun, long before astronomers came up with this idea in Europe. They recorded that the precession of the equinox, which takes 26,000 years, and they knew that this had a long cycle of 26,000 years. Now, how they knew these things, we're never going to know, but they left us something which might be a clue. They recorded that a race of aliens visited the Earth, and these aliens were called the Anunnaki. And they came from a planet that goes on a long elliptical circuit coming back into the solar system that takes 3,600 years to do a complete circuit before it once again passes close to the Earth. And the planet is, the name they gave it was Nibiru. Now, these Anunnaki left a few of their race here as their planet went away on this long journey. And these Anunnaki that they left behind were called Enki and Enlil. and the Sumerians treated them as gods because they clearly had more knowledge and more power than anything that we had down here on earth. And they've left us effigies in the shape of the clay statues and things that they've shown us what they look like. Now, the Sumerians said that these gods wanted to crossbreed with the race of humanoids here on earth at that time, and that crossbreeding created the Homo sapien of today. And this was a kind of an acceleration of our evolution, creating a human that was less Neanderthal and much more intelligence. And this new race was able to take advantage of the technologies the Anunnaki brought in the way of agriculture and other inventions, and was intelligent enough to be able to develop them all the way through to the modern day. So what's interesting, if you look at modern day Homo sapien, if this was the result of a crossbreeding of an alien culture and a Neanderthal humanoid culture, is how unsuitable we are on this planet as Homo sapiens. If you look at our skin, it's thin and it's not suited to being out in the sun. And if you're nomadic and you're not going to be in a dwelling of some sort, you're going to spend a great deal of your time during the day out in the sun. But our skin burns. And it doesn't matter if you've got brown skin or black skin. It still burns if you stay out in the sun too long. We also don't have sufficient hair for protection against the environment. We're also physically weaker than almost all of the major predators that we would have to fight off. And here's the most interesting thing, is we have no night vision. Now, having no night vision gives you as a creature a distinctly dangerous failing in the world of predators who all have night vision. The other thing is we can't do is we can't take those extremes of heat or cold. If we slept out in the desert at night, we'd probably freeze to death. And in the day, in hot climes, we have to take shelter. So we really aren't equipped to be in this world in the sense of our physicality. But the one thing we have got, of course, is we're blessed with a higher intelligence. And this has allowed us to offset all these disadvantages through invention and innovation. Now, it's been said that these new type humans grew in numbers and then migrated away from that area so that they set up settlements on their own to the north and the south of that particular area. And one of these settlements would become the area called Khazaria, which is where the Anasazi were situated. And when they decided to become Jewish rather than Christian or Islamic, they became effectively a closed society. That meant that their breeding was closed in. And I kind of wondered whether this had the effect of concentrating the advantages of intelligence rather than watering it down with the lesser known Neanderthals that would have been around at the time. And over the eons that passed, they concentrated inbreeding would have resulted in a race that was quite exceptionally more intelligent than the rest of the humanoids around on the planet at the time. And we can now see today in the results that I've shown you and other things that are there with this particular group, that their brain power is undeniable in every area of human endeavour. And I don't know if they're genetically different from us. We don't really have any data to show whether they are or not. But they're certainly an amazing set of people for such a tiny population on this planet. And their superior intelligence has allowed them to rise in every single area of endeavour, right across all the arts, the sciences, the banking, wherever you look, they always excel. An interesting thing, if you look at the old story of the Jewish people, is that they refer to themselves as the chosen people or the children of God sometimes. I think this is maybe an ancient mythological reference to the fact that their ancestors were in fact chosen by the gods Enki and Enlil, and by isolating themselves and concentrating those cerebral advantages, that they in fact could well be the descendants of these Anunnaki gods. And the big question is this what the Anasazi really are? The children of the gods?